although I was born into Sikhism, that was the faith I was born into. I was not a practicing Sikh by any stretch of the imagination, and nor did I really understand what a practicing Sikh actually did. And in fact, I don't even think my mother, who was quite religious, even she understood. So that was really a little bit about how I was kind of introduced to the faith. But my background was really very much like everybody else around me. I was very driven by my own success in life, my career, just feeding off what society expected of me. I sense now, looking back, I was a very insecure young man, feeling that I needed to prove myself, and I realised where that come from. But it's a separate conversation. So that was my drivers, to show the world, show my circle of friends, my family, my relatives, that I was, a successful person, which then led beyond to me running my own business, which then inevitably, because of my insecurity and driver for a sense of accomplishment and achievement, became a very successful business as well. I had a mentality very much of, living life in the fast lane, if you like. I was very much into fast cars and the nice things in life, good holidays, nice hotels, nice houses. So I was always feeding this lifestyle, which never, it was never able to be quenched. And although there was moments of me thinking, well, that was important to me, now I've achieved it, but I want the next thing, there were moments that was starting to creep into my mind, but they were never significant enough for me to actually respond and reflect on what I'm going to do differently. So my feeling was, like so many other people, I was just driven by what people around me were doing and what society and what the media suggested was a successful life, and that was my only tunnel vision focus. I would say, so although there were moments that I would think to myself, is this it? Every year I'm successful, I'm able to buy these other things or have these other experiences. Is this it? But as I say, that kind of internal reflection or question, it just wasn't profound or significant enough for me to actually respond in any depth. I would say the change came within about 6 months, and I realise now that many of these things needed to happen in order for me to reflect more deeply. So I started questioning a bit more harder. I started reading some really profound books. One of them was The Power of Now. Again, within that 6 months, I had a pretty significant life change and experience when I was told I had stage 1 cancer. So a combination of all of these things, I think, within quite a short, concentrated space of time, made me question more deeply about what my purpose and what my life was about. And I was probably in my late 30s, early 40s when this happened. And I'm 52 now. So, and I now reflect back and realize that approximate 6 month timeline in my life became my biggest blessing, because I wouldn't really have woken up from that deep slumber and Ferris wheel of life had I not had those experiences. The core values, I believe, of Sikhism is first and foremost truthful living, and I appreciate that's quite a broad descriptive word to use, but the layers underneath that I would consider to be stuff like to live genuinely honestly with your engagement with others, loved ones, with yourself, and with the belief and understanding that it's whether somebody's watching or not should not have it should not have an impact on that honest frame of reference and on an honest frame of life, because that value and understanding is that the that God is always watching us. So even if we feel perhaps that we're able to get away with certain things or certain behaviors that may be contradictory to being honest and having integrity, somebody's always watching. And I think those values play very highly into Sikhism, as well as stuff like kindness and compassion, um, selfless service, helping others without any expectation in things in return. I think is a value that's really highly honoured and revered in Sikhism. But I must add that to really adopt those values as a person, you've got to be doing something in tandem with that. Otherwise, the change just doesn't happen. You, for instance, can't all of a sudden start living honestly when you've lived dishonestly for maybe most of your life. There's got to be something in tandem that you're doing that's going to help you and guide you back to that honest place. And for Sikhs, that's a practical method of mindful practice that's called Simran. It's a way we settle the mind and control the mind, and there's various techniques that we use to do that, which all comes from our scripture. But it starts with chanting, and we call it Simran, Naam Simran. So you're repeating God's name, and through that consistent, everyday, that regular practice, those good virtues will automatically start coming out, because you're reducing the volume of that chatter and that voice inside your head. So there's got to be, for me, Sikhism, those values in Sikhism are all well and good, but there's got to be a practice that's carried out by the person in order to have those values and adopt those values. They don't just come from nowhere. So for me, those are the core values of Sikhism. But most importantly, there's a method on obtaining those values, even when people are sometimes maybe reluctant to give up those those behaviors. So for me, yeah, they're the true core values of Sikhism. I would say the biggest thing for me to really demonstrate the authenticity of this path to somebody who's maybe skeptical right now is there's a difference between following a blind faith or following a faith blindly, compared to knowing through experience that something is true. I believe that to be a distinct difference. And the more of that experience of truth you have, the more motivated and inspired you feel to walk further down that path. And I think that's the biggest game changer for me in finding Sikhism and finding the path of Sikh true and real, is because I can differentiate between just being inspired by great words or great people's talk and feeding off their energy, which then dissipates after 3, 4, 5 days, compared to experiencing and knowing through experience that this path is true, that I think is the absolute biggest game changer. And there's no better feeling inside when you know, not believe. It's when you know something is true, and that knowing only comes when you practice and you practice. It's like anything, if you want to be a world champion, tennis player or world champion MMA, whatever sport pursuit you're in, if you want to be at the pivotal um, top percentage quartile in that sport or sector, it takes daily practice. So if the purpose is to meet the divine, which in itself is a hugely motivating ideology in itself, then it's going to require hard work and practice, and it's a daily practice. But knowing you're on the right path and knowing it's true, I think is the biggest difference for me, certainly. I would say some of the benefits of the practice and the experience I've had since I've embarked on this journey with Sikhi is that I don't feel I'm a slave to my mind and my thoughts anymore. And I think that's a massive point, and it can't be taken lightly. Whereas before I felt I was my thoughts and I had to respond to them. I had to think about things constantly, uh, and I had to get anxious about certain things. But I realise now I don't need to do that. It's a choice that I can make. I think the benefit of being out in this beautiful world that we live in and being able to appreciate the environment more than perhaps I would have done 10 years ago. I realise now that comes from me being more present than I was before. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a fully present individual right now, and it's a target and a destination that I hope to reach at some point in my life. But I've definitely noticed a significant difference where I can appreciate the smallest things, and I can look at something that might be quite mundane and normal to others, but I can appreciate the natural beauty of it significantly more than perhaps I ever would have done before. So, and that includes just the colours and the way nature is for me. I find, certain environments around nature profoundly inspirational and joyous. So yeah, they would be the key benefits for me. But the fundamental one being knowing I'm not my thoughts, and knowing I've got a far deeper purpose in life that's beyond the material rat race that I used to be on, that Ferris wheel, is a hugely a hugely peaceful and a feeling of salvation without a doubt. I would say I believe my purpose of life now to be very, very different to what I felt my purpose was maybe, say, 10 or 15 years ago. I'll just go back to that original purpose in my life. What I thought was my purpose was to earn lots of money, to be as successful outwardly and inwardly, mostly to show others that I'm a success, um, and ultimately to obtain things to show that my life's a success, and then to go on and get married and have children. That was really the limitation of my purpose in life. And if I could travel the world while I'm doing that, wow, then I really have obtained the purpose of my life. Which just seems so ironic now, because I believe now, having spent the last almost 8 to 10 years following this practical path that is Sikhi, is I understand my purpose, and not only understand, I feel and know my purpose is very different to that now. My purpose now, through experience, through understanding, having gone through certain milestones through the teachings of the scripture, my knowing that the purpose to be now is to meet the divine while I'm alive. That's the ultimate. That's the ultimate purpose of my life now. And the funny thing is, if somebody had said that to me 10 or 15 years ago, I would have really been skeptical and almost would have been laughing inside. But I actually know that that's something that's achievable. through practical experience. So for me, that really for me is the purpose of my life, and that will only come once I'm able to win the mind and be the master of my mind, and that comes back to the point I made earlier, with the fact that this practice that we must do to calm that mind down from that obsessive chatter and noise that the mind makes, and us thinking we are our thoughts and responding to these thoughts like just reactive, just completely reactive machines almost. I know the only way to reduce that is through a practical method, which is a meditative practice that we call is Simran, Nam Simran, where we repeat God's name, and that's the foundation of the ability to control our mind. But ultimately, if you ask me what the purpose of my life is, it's to meet the divine while I'm alive, not after death.